Zero-click searches in 2024, Unpacking Google's search behavior in the US and EU. Brought to you by the Digital Marketing Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Digital Marketing Podcast. Alex, welcome back. How's everything going with you?
Things are great. How's everyone? How are you, Rocco?
I'm good.
You woken up yet?
Yeah, I woke up, went for my workout. I was excited about this episode because we were discussing it internally this week, and it was very interesting. Like, we were looking into an article that was talking about how basically only 1% of the searchers click on a paid ad. A lot of people don't take any action. It was a very interesting insight, and fair enough, you thought it was worth of an episode, which I totally agreed on because it was very interesting. And to me, what was surprising, and I'm gonna read some of the numbers for our listeners, is that the behavior on Google seems to be quite interesting nowadays. So in 2024, if we look into overall performance of Google, and I'm gonna share my screen to share this graph with everybody, we can see that basically out of every search, 41.5% made a click in the US, with 70% being an unpaid organic results, 28.5% YouTube Maps, etc., and 1% being a paid ad. Then 37.1% did nothing, 21.4% did another search, and out of all those results, we have basically 58.5% of zero-click searches. Now, this could mean a lot, right? It could mean that people are not they're not finding what they're looking for. It could be that potentially there is a lot of informative searches. But Alex, how do you interpret this?
That it's a cultural change just in terms of a behavior, and I guess why I thought it was an important topic to talk about, because it's not being talked about, and it's a huge shift, and I think a lot of us listening in, but also myself, have other stakeholders that we reporting KPIs to. A lot of these KPIs are built based on some sort of ratio compared to last year or the year before as well, to sort of put things into context. And these numbers that actually are only 4 out of 10 people that do search actually click through and actually record a visit onto a website or an app is huge. And if you use traditional sort of KPI data and etc., internally, you'll probably get fired without properly getting full context to what is actually going on here. And because ultimately it looks like you suck at your job. And so I think this is really why I felt that it was a very important aspect, and something that we have really put and stressed with our clients, that things are changing, and we can't use historical data completely to sort of predict the future and what is good today versus what was good 2 years ago.
Yeah, and something, Alex, that to me strikes my attention is that this is also some sort of a wake-up call, because when you look into this data a little bit more in depth, there is a clear scream for information rather than always service and products. That's why 37% do nothing after they do a search, and 21% do another search. But there is a wake-up call for firms that have been focusing extremely on selling. And this selling approach, it's creating a problem for firms more than they think. Because let's be honest about that. If of the 41% that clicked on something, and 70% of these clicks are organic and 1% are paid. Now, paid shows up higher than organic. That's like a fact. They're on top there. But that means that those ads do not answer the query, the need of the user. And that's a big deal. That's a big problem, meaning that most of the times, rather than providing the information people are looking for, most likely there is a lot of focus on being too commercial about what companies are putting out there. Wouldn't you say there seems to be a link there?
I think that is one hypothesis, and yes, I think it's been extremely aggressive when it comes to the commercial side of things, and this is a bit of a revolution against that. But I mean, one also one I'd say another hypothesis, at least from my side, would be also that Google has been part of steering this experience by offering insight snippets and featured snippets to make things a lot easier for the end user. So they've changed the territory that we used to know so well, and therefore people behave in such a way. And yeah, I mean, often people are doing searches because they just need some quick information, and they don't want to read through a 4,000 page blog post on a topic that goes very drilled down to actually the one thing that you find at the bottom. I think, Rocco, you're actually muted of some reason.
Oh, I probably muted myself in case there was an echo there. But no, pretty much, Alex, like I do agree, like a lot of searches are informative. Users want informative searches. And that makes sense, right? That the majority of them are 0 clicks. Probably a lot of my searches are 0 clicks as well. But it is interesting how also these trends are very similar between US and EU. There is a little bit more focus on paid and organic clicks, but they're pretty much mirroring each other from that standpoint. But it would be interesting, of course, we don't have the data available, how these numbers would change depending on the type of search of the user. Because I'm sure, for example, if let's say you are in the middle of the road, your car stops working, and you perform a search for roadside assistance, the 1% of paid is gonna be much higher, and the 0 click searches will pretty much go down to nothing, right? So I think that also depends a lot of the kind of searches that they are doing. This is, of course, more of a generic analysis here, but it's kind of interesting how it is picking up a lot also the other properties from Google. There is a 28.5% in the US and a 24% in Europe of people clicking on YouTube, maps, images, news, and other Google property. So it is showing an evolution in the way people search, if we think about that. Whenever I look at YouTube being up there and unpaid organic results being up there, it really means that people are looking for information a lot, because otherwise you're not gonna watch a video or read a page, right? Now, Alex, this is like, of course, not concerning, none of that, but if there was one key learning from this data that you would say, I'm gonna take it and bring it inside my company to improve what I'm doing, what would it be based on this data?
I mean, I see opportunity more than anything, because I think that there's a lot of companies, agencies, specialists that are behaving by the so-called old paradigm, or the way that they used to do things. While not in today's world, while this sort of definitely speaks to what type of content one should sort of write or sort of create, one needs to start looking into what are your users actually looking for. Because if you're able to structure, again, build a landing page and have this information packaged in such a format that Google likes it, and you have a great opportunity of being featured in these featured snippets. Um, these may not directly result in a click through and a visit today, but it's an amazing, amazing branding opportunity.
I
And
agree.
because I think when we're starting to talk both about paid and SEO as channels to grow your business, I personally must admit that I can't really see or sort of boost me with that any of those are rather any good at creating awareness.
Yeah,
Um,
to me, one of the things that strikes my attention here and that I think made me reflect a lot is that every 100 searches, 41 and a half are a click. Of these 41 clicks, pretty much you're gonna get the majority of them on organic, and then YouTube, then a little bit on paid. But that's not a big amount of clicks at the end of the day, right? Considering all the searches that are happening. That brings to me the fact that companies really need to step up their game to keep the communication with their customers as simple as possible, as immediate as possible, and really let them understand what they're all about. I work with a lot of SaaS companies, and sometimes you go on their website and you don't understand what these companies do. Like, it's literally like, they use so many complex words to explain something very simple that they do. And if you already have on the paid side 1% of these clicks, so every 100 searches, you're gonna get pretty much zero point 0.3 clicks, if you think about that. And then you get the click and you have hieroglyphs explaining what you do. Like, what are you doing, right? Like, you're not doing a good job at explaining it. So to me, that highlights the fact that whenever you get that click, you really need to keep it simple for users to understand what you do. And that, to me, that's what strikes the attention the most.
I mean, I think considering that now part of what we're discussing are user behaviors um, and sort of how things are starting to trend. And I think before, um, marketing departments could stand on almost like siloed legs, where you had the paid side on the one side, sort of running their own gig, and SEO standing on the other side, sort of running their own gig. They didn't really need to speak. It would have been ideal if they did. But this type of trend now, when we're starting to see how the data is being structured, um, how you're sort of what type of ads you're writing, how you're formatting them, um, are you sort of utilizing your local search queries in a lot better way for localization? And it's starting to really speak more towards an integrated, um, where you work across channels with cross insights rather than anything else. So it's starting to be actually make sure that you're starting to get like a really good user experience. And I
By
think the
the way,
user experience
Alex,
will pay off.
Paul noticed that my dogs didn't really appreciate my comment earlier on SEO. I think the mailman must have showed up, but he also wanted to share the fact that he agrees about the fact that, a lot of B2B tech companies are very full of soft, vague, comprehensive, in-class solution type of language. And one of the things that I would like to precise here is that there is a big component in firms that they believe that everybody understands the products the way they understand it. And probably the right target consumer might understand it a little bit better, But the reality of the fact is, anytime you simplify the language, you see conversion rates increase. And it's almost like mathematics, right? You make it simple to see what your value added are, and they perform better. And again, in what we have been discussing today about what happens every time a user searches something on Google, it kind of become very, very relevant for them, right? Like, what do I need to do to make sure that people understand what I'm offering? And Alex, this brings up another topic, right? Which is, the majority of the searches in the market are not about I'm looking for a software, or I'm looking for a service provider that does this. Most of the searches are, for example, how do I add negative keywords to Performance Max campaign, right? This is a person that clearly knows what they're doing. They know that there is a problem adding negative keywords. A marketing agency that wants to advertise for their search shouldn't show an ad that is like, or even an organic result, we increase your ROAS by 200%. No, the result should be, learn how to optimize Performance Max campaign and add negative keywords. Now that ad is, or that organic, is going to generate a click. If the content that users are not seeing is not in that direction, they're either going to perform another search or do nothing. And by the way, you need to contact the Google support rep to add negative keywords to Performance Max if you guys are doing that search. It's
I think number one here, you lost money because you had a really bad ad.
But also from organic standpoint, right? If you want to rank for that, you need to have an article covering that topic. Otherwise, people are gonna get upset at you. What did I just read?
Exactly, and I think that, we're starting to move in. I might be more of a techie here, but we're starting to move into a world where structure is more important. A structure for Google and the Google bots to sort of, or any search engine for that matter, to be able to read what you actually share and the format of it. So you have a tool called schema.org that helps you, and you can actually run tests on your own website to ensure that you've set it up in the best possible way to ensure that you are being featured for these type of questions. And those questions might lead to a click through, or they might not. And this is definitely not a client of mine. I wish, but it's a company called Wise, also known as TransferWise.
Yeah.
I've noticed here, but also in Europe, how good they've become of really becoming the financial advisor in featured snippets.
Yes.
They have a long-term sales funnel where they start establishing themselves as, the thought leader on anything you have to do with financial and their business and how they can help you. And it's never hardcore sales. It's to create awareness. Hey, we are here. This is the information you're looking for. And you only have a limited amount of words to really answer my sort of, people also ask questions. And everyone has access to this. But some have sort of adopted to this sort of less click or zero click sort of world we're living in, faster than others. And I just see that this is an amazing opportunity for more to do.
And there is also another very interesting stats that the report we read was highlighting, which is desktop searches. So now desktop searches in the US and EU are dropping months after month. So for the other day, I was at the Best Buy, an electronics store nearby my house, and I was checking those new phones that are coming out, and they open any sort of ways to make screens that are bigger than your hand. So people are becoming more and more comfortable searching also for purchases and for business related things on their mobile devices which kind of goes back into the fact now, not only companies need to create good content, but that content is going to be shrank. And when the content is shrank, you are talking about how can I maximize my what I communicate to users to get that click. And it is interesting how, of course, here in the US, mobile adoption has been faster than in Europe, but it is getting to the point where this problem of communicating and staying in touch with the customer as much as possible, it is becoming more and more prominent. So that report should really open the eyes on the fact that yes, like you really have this much space to tell people what you're all about, right? Alex, what did you think when you saw this specific graph? It's very interesting, right?
Yes. I mean, I think that it really has it speaks something, yes, but I think it also speaks to the preference of um, who is using what when. I guess in terms of also the adaptation. Uh, I think if we were to look at that, i.e., for Africa, it will look very, very different because everyone frog leaped to desktop.
Now, of course, it's different by geographic location, of course, and this is something that, of course, also is related to the fact that cultures are different across the world and consumers' behaviors are across the world. But Europe is a country where, like for example, when my parents buy something, they buy from the computer because the mobile tricks you, or I don't know what they think, right? Me, I haven't bought something for my computer in ages because it's just phone, right? But
Yeah.
that is changing. That is changing rapidly with the new generations, and companies kind of need to adapt to that.
Yeah, and a lot of companies they don't. Um, and I mean, similar to what Paul also mentioned earlier in terms of the B2B side of things, but it's also um, the B2C side of things that there's a lot of, I'd call them startups that aren't mature enough to actually be sort of mainstream brands that have released something very early and they communicate in a very engineering way to people. And so I think we have a lot more, SaaS businesses. We have a lot more of incoming influx of businesses that have yet not had the time to mature and sort of find whom their mainstream market is, and therefore almost repackage and resell it. Um, but yeah, I actually lost train of thought. Where were we?
No, so basically, we this is another very interesting place, Alex, in terms of how companies needs to adapt. This is interesting. The majority of zero-click searches are actually desktop compared to mobile, which makes sense. Desktop is also like a good source of traffic, but it also means that people on desktop research more. So technically, they're more forgiving about lack of information because they do research more. Mobile people are simply more, they want to be more to the point. It goes back to what the point you were making about companies needing to adapt and needing to understand how the market is moving to be able to actually make smarter decisions when it comes to this kind of decision from a purchase standpoint or a consumer standpoint. But Alex, something else that is it is interesting and that you brought up to me with a message yesterday was the fact that AI results are showing up on Google is not having that much of an impact in terms of how people are interacting with Google's results. Now, I'm not really surprised by that because my thought is Google makes a living off those results. And therefore, that's something that they need to keep going in order to be able to survive. But it is also interesting because many people said, "Oh, AI is going to be such a big problem for searchers, for companies that advertise, and for Google as a search engine." What was your thought about that article?
I mean, it sort of stayed with me because I mean, one of the fastest growing companies ever was ChatGPT or OpenAI, but it's like it it beyond like anyone. It went from, however, the retention rate of most of the current standing um, sort of various AI models isn't very strong. I mean, they don't really share much retention rate, but there's because we're still stuck with the problem with the like ChatGPT to use them as an example. It's very difficult to get a proper answer out of with the quality. So there's a lot of time that goes in to perfect sort of your prompt, and there aren't that many people that actually have that patience, unfortunately. So I think at least when it comes to these search patterns, things have routed back. They test it, they hear the hype, they have an account, but they go back to Google.
And part of it is also because sometimes AI still gives you links to sources that go to completely weird pages, right? So, I mean, I think there's still a long way for Google to lose a lot of market share. And you can see that in this graph. Essentially, from May 2023 to May 2024, the usage of Google hasn't changed at all. The other
it's actually increased, which is also crazy on that hand. But yes, I think out of the current sort of mainstream languages, or the ones that are being sort of mentioned here, I'd say that Perplexity is probably the one that has
the biggest
good,
yeah.
biggest opportunity. They also have advertising as part of their business model built into it, so they
Yeah,
benefit from this.
that's gonna be a very interesting one. And then there was also this other interesting graph here where they basically are telling you, actually you can see that Google is literally dominating on top there, and Perplexity is gaining some market share. Surprisingly, DuckDuckGo also is doing pretty well, with being surprisingly still a big player, but Google with YouTube, and Google is literally dominating the market in that uh, in the space.
I think we're a couple of a percentage of the world's population that are so-called super users and may use um, AI to support us on a daily basis. Um, but I don't think it is that adopted among mainstream as of yet.
No,
And when
fair enough. Fair enough.
I
No,
mean, I speak about Perplexity in other countries, they've never heard about it.
yeah, it takes a lot today. Like, you need to do a pretty strong first mover advantage, right? Like ChatGPT was the first mover in the space, and they're still holding that first mover advantage. But Alex, we covered a lot of ground today. I really like this episode here. Before we wrap it up, is there any other thing you would like to add that you think our users might like to know?
I mean, I think SparkToro really deserves a huge kudos from us. That really sort of gave us these insights and sort of sparked some good thoughts, just in terms of also how, where we're going. And I think to sort of at least word of advice from my side, it would be, it might have been easy to project sort of the future with the help of the past. And going forward, be wary of that. So be clear on that one. But yes.
Alex, we have a comment for you. I've not seen any advertising for Perplexity. I know about it through forums like this, but most people aren't paying as much attention as I do. This is true, Alex, right? But Perplexity from what I've heard, it is precise. It is very good AI. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about the Perplexity for people that might be curious about it?
I'd say that Perplexity doesn't do advertising per se. They were Perplexity is not a large language model per se. They aggregate ChatGPT, Claude, and a couple of more. Um, I think Llama as well. So Facebook's open sourced, and then they refine it on top of that to really make it very user friendly. So they have almost like a user interface such as Google's, um, but a lot more stripped down. So no ads, no bling blings, no nothing. And you get a quick summary, and then you get the reference links to where they actually got the sources from, to ensure that you do not have the same effect that a lot of other large language models got, just in terms of hallucination. So you can go in and actually ensure that you can double check the source. But I think what Perplexity are smart about was that they started indexing their own searches. So, and as part of that one, Google's Gemini, so in your on your cell phone when you do searches, that materialized. So
Yeah.
you actually had Perplexity results when you use Google Chrome, with a link back to Perplexity. So I think like that's the closest to marketing that I've seen, and then I've seen the founder sort of stepping up and sort of becoming um, equal to Perplexity. So he's on a lot of podcasts at the moment. He leads the way that way, and speaks, I'd say, to Paul, based on your question, more to the early industry. He's trying to get early adapters,
Yeah.
um, those that are quick to move, to test, give feedback, refine product before they start moving over to the next, which will be sort of early mainstream market.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. That was a very good explanation. I'm gonna start trying Perplexity myself to see what it looks like, and I'm gonna be curious to see how it compares. But it seems to be a pretty cool platform. We're just playing around with it. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I really appreciated your time today. Alex, thank you again. We are going to share with the rest of our listeners the dates of our next podcast. And as always, have a good rest of the week.
And I think we will also give a good reference to this article that we sort of, I guess, based on our conversation around, but also with a lot of experience and a lot of insights. And yeah, I think be cautious out there, but also see like the huge upside that you have today, because you, like many other companies, haven't even started this. So there is like first mover advantage of what Rocco mentioned, but in this field.
Sounds good, guys. Then talk to you soon and have a good rest of your day. Bye bye.
Likewise, ciao.